Welcome to Nice Ashes. I'm Nate.
And I'm Mike. What are we smoking today, Nate?
Well, it looks like a torpedo, and it is a Rocky Patel, Connecticut.
The initial taste off of the wrapper was not pleasant to me.
It was not. I was waiting for you to mention it because I was like, I don't know exactly what the flavor is. It could be the acetone or something. It's something. I don't know what it is. It's not quite as sharp as like earwax, but it's not dissimilar enough, in my opinion.
The first puff is tainted by that horrible taste of the wrapper.
Oh, yeah.
But by the third, the smoke is kind of taking over, and it's quite pleasant. The smoke is pleasant. The wrapper is not.
Yeah, I concur with you there. Wrapper is... you really taste the wrapper, too, if you lick your lips. Unfortunately.
Yes, I'm going to try to smoke this a little drier than normal. Let's put it that way. Seems like a wise choice, at least at this moment in time.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the wrapper flavor kind of wears down pretty quickly.
Yeah. Oh, if it doesn't, this is going to be a slog.
It might be a slog anyway, but we'll get to that in a second. I am pairing mine with a Fulton Hop Kingdom Imperial IPA.
All right. See, and I'm really fancy. I have a double pairing. My ice machine, which is a 2-gallon ice machine, ran out of ice today because it's so cool and brisk outside. So I have one pumpkin spice cocktail and a Hamm's beer because we are classy here.
All right. And we're in October, I guess. So happy Halloween to all of our listeners.
Yes, HEB makes holiday special pops that I get imported directly from Texas once a year. So I savor them and spread them out.
Since it is Texas, you do have to wait for them to go through customs.
You should, at least.
Well, what are we talking about? Hopefully something spicier than this wrapper.
Yes. We are going to talk about the first presidential debate between Biden and Trump this year. Which might be the last presidential debate between Biden and Trump.
Well, it depends. What's the over-under on either one of them kicking the bucket before the next one?
Right. As of recording, Biden is still in the race and won't step aside. So
yes, and I've been seeing there's been lots of people calling for him to step down, even within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, mainstream voices that weeks ago were vocal supporters of the Biden administration. So
yes,
we'll find out. So we're going to start this off with some background information because it definitely colors what we're about to experience. So at any point, stop me and we can cover.
Okay.
So this is a CNN-held debate, and CNN changed their rules. And they changed their rules so they could exclude Robert Kennedy Jr.
Okay.
Now, RFK has filed a complaint with the FEC saying that this debate qualifies as a donation to the DNC and the RNC. I'm going to give you some background information, a little fact check for this claim. So the rules to get in were 15% in 4 major polls, and they had to have ballot access to 270 electoral votes.
Okay.
So the issue with these rules is that no candidate right now has access to any ballot because there are no official candidates of any parties. So Trump and Biden are not actually the candidates for the Democrat and Republican Party. They are the presumptive nominees. They are not the actual nominees. Did you follow that, Nate?
Yes, I followed that. Everybody's operating under the assumption that they are the candidates, but neither Biden nor Trump are the officially designated candidates for president from their respective parties. Those parties still have to finish or finalize their selection process, which for quickness, let's say, is going to take place sometime in the future. And as such, they don't meet the required number of access to electoral voters that the CNN debate put in place to keep RFK Jr. out.
That is correct. And that is correct. Also, the polls that CNN chose as major polls, most of them did not have RFK Jr. as an option on the poll.
Okay.
So definitionally, they were excluding him through the process, right?
Yes. Now, back when I was really political, Mike, I got really excited and spun up about a third-party candidate. I don't know if you remember him, Bob Barr.
I do remember Bob Barr. I do.
And he was, at the time, he was a vocal third party, and he was somebody that did a lot of, I think at that time it was probably, you would consider it blogging or whatever. Like he would communicate. So he had all these little communications. And so he was bemoaning, it wasn't on Twitter, I don't think, because that wasn't really a thing then, but he was writing about how he was being forcibly kept out of debates and off of ballots in states. And it was similar stuff where you had to poll at a certain percentage to be on the ballot in certain states. And I think it's probably, hopefully it's pretty clear to everyone that if you're not printed on the ballot, you're not going to win.
Definitely. And they do shenanigans even when you write candidates in. If you obviously misspell, but even if you don't capitalize the right letters, they'll split the votes. So it would be like Robert Kennedy. If you wrote Robert Kennedy and you had a capital O, they would put that potentially different than if you had just Robert Kennedy with a capital R and a capital K. Or if you put Robert Kennedy Jr., then they would count that different than Robert Kennedy. There's a lot of shenanigans with write-in candidates.
Okay, sure.
Yes. What else were you saying?
Oh, that was about it at this time, other than just to clarify that none of the candidates, or even presumptive candidates, have hit any of the requirements, or not any, but they didn't hit the electorate.
The Electoral College. So this was basically acknowledged by the FEC as rules that do not fall within the current understanding of election law. But they're not going to find CNN. So it was one of those Hillary Clinton email situations where they acknowledged that there was a law broken, but they're not going to prosecute.
Yeah.
Right? So not to bring up Hillary Clinton in this debate, but she was guilty of a felony. They just chose not to prosecute. So,
well, she likely would have been found guilty of a felony had they chosen to prosecute, but they didn't. So,
yes, but they didn't. Also, now, so this is background about CNN. They had two moderators. One was Dana Bash and one was Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper is a notorious anti-Trump conspiracy theorist who is a well-known Democratic operative, and there are reels. You can find it online for those who want to laugh. Minutes of dialogue of Jake Tapper saying things that are blatantly untrue about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he's very biased.
Which is what you want in a debate, right? For a moderator?
Right. Well, he's the good one, right? So Dana Bash, her husband is a spook. And he was one of the 51 intelligence agents who lied under oath and said that there was nothing on Hunter Biden's laptop that was against the law and that it was a Russian disinformation attempt. Even though internally, at that time, they knew that it was, in fact, truly Hunter Biden's laptop.
Yep.
So she is like deep state tied to protecting the Biden administration from being prosecuted for crimes that they've committed.
Yes.
And that's, to me, more serious than just some pundit that's kind of a jackoff. Right?
Yeah, So they went and got the cream of both crops, right?
Right. So they just couldn't put a fair debate together at CNN because it's impossible. So they just went all in, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to go big, go big.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we should clarify, too, for the listeners, I didn't watch the debate, and Mike did for the purposes of this episode. The only thing I have seen was the opening remarks of this debate cut with the opening remarks from the Mitt Romney-Barack Obama debate, showing the vast contrast of civility between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama and the, I don't know what you call, the name-calling, immature banter of this one. So that's all I know of the debate.
Yes, this is a Mike knows, but also a kind of a lens by which you could view the debate if you did not, in fact, watch it for yourself. Because I've watched it twice. I watched it when it came out, and I watched it again with a notepad. So I'm going to annotate for you my viewing of events.
And I will Mystery Science 3000 it for you.
Yes. So the rules are one-sided, and I'm going to list the rules off, and then you can tell me what you think about them. Number 1, there's no audience. Number 2, the microphones are turned off and on, and they're only on during the allotted time for each candidate. They cannot go over time. They will shut them off. And they did multiple times. You're allowed 2 minutes for an answer to a question from a moderator. You're allowed 1 minute response to the other person's answer, and you are allowed up to 1 minute rebuttal. And then the moderators can give 1 extra minute for follow-ups if they think it's a good dialogue. So if you are asked the question, you get 3 minutes, and if you're not, basically you get 1.
Okay.
Right? Now, these rules, in my opinion, favor Joe Biden.
How? Because he gets to the point quicker, or he doesn't have points, so it doesn't matter?
Because they have time limits, very strictly enforced, and they don't have an audience to play off of.
Okay.
And they shut your microphone off. So there's no interruption. It's all monologue, no interruption, not possible. And they control the back and forth so that if they want to change a subject, they can immediately change subject. So if one candidate starts falling apart, they can ask a new question, no response, right?
Yep. So I guess in terms of the time limit, I think that's good. I think keeping the mics off so there's no interruption is good, but I think if they're going to do 3 to answer and 1 for rebuttal, it should be 3 and 1, regardless of what they say or if they're on track or not.
It was 2 and 1.
2 and 1. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. It was 2 and 1 and then 1 extra for a response.
Okay,
right.
I got it. Okay, so then I think they should just stick to that and not worry about cutting people off or turning mics off if they're getting off topic or anything. The timing thing is interesting. We're already used to it as a country with the Oscars. You know, they bring the music up to tell people to wrap up their speeches and things like that. When you have an event, even if there's no live audience and it's televised and it needs to fit in a certain time slot, I guess that's kind of the nature of doing it like that. Though
the thing is,
it wouldn't necessarily have to be because we have the internet and you could just say, hey, we're just streaming it online. It's going to take 4.5 hours. Go nuts.
So this debate was only on CNN. What the fuck else are they going to put on CNN at night? They do not need to schedule anything other than a presidential debate for certain. That's all they need, right? Yeah. So I understand what you're saying if it was ABC, because everybody wants to watch whatever the latest show is. But CNN, what else is there going to be? You know, nobody gives a shit about Anderson Cooper at 9 o'clock or whatever time Anderson Cooper's at.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was just trying to counterpoint it with you have, broadcast time slot.
Right.
And other programming that maybe people do or don't care about, but somebody somewhere said we're going to give it X amount of time and you have to figure out how to make it fit in X amount of time with 2 people that are notorious for rambling. So.
Oh, the rambling will continue.
Yes.
So the debate opened up, and it was a disaster from the start. Biden walked out first. He walks out, and he does his limp walk that everybody's seen. It's very disturbing to see the president walk in that fashion.
Yeah.
And then he waves to a crowd that isn't there, and he talks to a crowd that isn't there. So he pretends as though there is a crowd, but there is no crowd. It's very disturbing.
That is definitely strange.
Very strange. And Trumpster, he just walks out in his, Trump walk, right? His, fat, cocky Trump walk. Everybody knows what it looks like.
It's as close to a strut as he's going to get, given his body type.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And he doesn't pretend that there's an audience or any goofy stuff. That's where I'm getting. It's like, this was definitely a one-sided interaction. Yes. And I try to be fair. So the first question was about inflation and what they're going to do about inflation. Now, this is going to set the tone, right, for basically the whole debate. Biden opens up. He blamed it on Trump and his poor handling of the pandemic. And he said that Trump left the country in chaos and the tax cut for the rich was leading to it, right?
Okay.
inflating it. Then the Trumpster did his Trump talk. He has his Trumpism that he had the greatest economy in history of the world. And then now he talked about how COVID was a big problem. And then he brought up lockdowns during the Biden administration, how bad they were for everybody. And then now in the rebuttal for Biden, Biden said something that is a lie for sure. He said that he is the only president of this decade to have no troops dying anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's ever been able to say that. I mean, maybe Washington before the First Continental Army was mustered, but since then we've always had soldiers out and they're dying either in foreign countries or on training missions. Like, didn't a helicopter just crash recently, or they're always crashing?
We're occupying multiple countries right now. We have 100 foreign military bases.
There's 2 wars going on right now, Ukraine or Russia and Israel-Palestine.
It's impossible to have no U.S. troops dying right now.
Yeah, there's got to be even just one die of appendicitis or something.
Right. It's just impossible that no U.S. troop has died in the last 3 years. Unlikely.
Highly unlikely.
After this, CNN tried to ask some other pointed question to help Biden out after he just blatantly lied.
Yeah.
And then both Trump and Biden babbled. They said nothing.
Okay.
Biden did his bumble words, and Trump threw out some Trumpisms and had nonsense talk, and it didn't make any sense. So I don't even know what their responses were. It's impossible to tell because they said nothing.
Yeah. So they had their first note card memorized, and then that was about it.
Mm-hmm. And poorly at that.
Yeah.
Right. So the next big question that was answered was the debt. And I'm going to make a note here because both of them have ballooned the national debt.
Yeah.
And Trump is the first one to answer. Now, Trump goes immediately to, he wants to cut taxes more for the wealthy and corporations so that the economy can get bigger, and that magically the economy being bigger will automatically pay down the debt, even though the people making all the money in the economy aren't going to be paying any taxes.
Yeah, I mean, that's sound logic, right?
Right. And then he switched gears and brought up vaccine mandates under Biden. And then he banged on about immigration. Now, this is going to be talking points for Trump throughout this. Anytime he's done answering a question directly, he will go back to immigration and back to the lockdowns and back to vaccine mandates.
Okay.
And they're kind of Trumpy ways, right? Trumpists.
Yeah.
And it turns into nonsense talk. So Biden responds to this, and he said, I quote, Trump had the largest national debt in the history of the country before me.
Okay.
And then he said that we had 1,000 trillionaires in America. And then, of course, corrected himself and said 1,000 billionaires. And then said he wanted to raise the income tax on the rich to 24%, which the highest tax bracket in the United States is 36%, I want to say.
Okay.
So he doesn't even want to raise the tax bracket to where like a jack-off making $170,000 would have to pay, right? Yeah. If you make $170,000, you're paying 36%. And there's very little as far as write-offs under the current tax code to lower that burden. Like, you're going to fucking pay, right?
Yeah. Unless you're connected politically.
Right. Well, if you're making $170,000 a year, you're not politically connected. You're like...
No, you're in the poor class compared to politicians.
Yeah, you're living in the same neighborhood as I am, right? Like, you're not... Yeah. you could be a school principal or a contractor, or... There's a number of jobs that make $170,000 a year that are not abnormal positions or something. It's not like a super huge amount of money to make, right?
Yep.
And then, of course, after he said he only wanted to raise the tax on the rich at 24%, he mumbled off for at least 30 seconds, and he finished his statement with the famous, I beat Medicare. Have you seen this clip? Yeah.
I did, yeah. And that was a great day when Biden finally beat Medicare. I didn't know that was a fight we were having as a country, but he did it. The son of a bitch did it. And I've never been so goddamn proud to be an American.
It's incredible, that fight that we had with Medicare.
Yes.
And then, of course, Trump, immediate response, and I wrote this down word for word. He's right. He beat Medicare to death. And then instead of talking more about taxes, He went into his Trumpisms and brought up illegal immigrants and how they're going to destroy Social Security and Medicare, because this is a theme with Trump that he doesn't have any solutions for illegal immigration, but he's going to blame all the problems in the country on illegal immigrants all the same. Whether it's right or wrong, he has no solution. Just, foreshadowing.
Yes.
Yes. Now, the next topic was Roe v. Wade.
Okay.
Trump was actually answered this question. Can you believe it?
He actually stayed on topic and on point for long enough.
He did, because he's savvy enough to know that this is a losing issue for him.
Yeah.
So he said very clearly he supports national access to abortion pills.
Yep.
And he also supports the states deciding abortion laws independently, and that he supports a system where some states are going to have more liberal laws and some states are going to have more conservative laws. He also would support a national law that would allow exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother.
Yep.
And then, of course, he babbled on about some nonsense about Democrats wanting postpartum abortions.
Oh, okay.
I've never heard of it. It's a talking point amongst Republicans. I'm sure you've heard it growing up as a child.
Just nonsense, though, but...
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And then Biden, he babbles on about some talk about scholars that said something, but I don't know what they said because he was just mumbling. And then he brought up 6-week bans in certain states and a woman that was murdered by an immigrant, and he basically supports federal supremacy. And then he said another famous line, and I quote, "Lots of women are raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, by their brothers and sisters."
Okay.
That's a direct quote. I listened to it and slowed it down and wrote it down.
Yeah.
All right. When I say it's a direct quote, I have it in quotes, and I wrote down exactly what they said.
Yep.
And then, of course, it devolved between the two of them into a debate about the border and how much raping and killing there is going on at the border.
Yeah.
Because why not? Now, that's totally related to abortion.
Yes.
And then somehow it got back on track, and Biden basically supports reenacting Roe versus Wade, even though he has no plan for passing a law that would make Roe versus Wade a federal law, by the way. Yeah. But he said that if he would make sure it happened somehow. But he's a Catholic, and he's never supported Roe versus Wade before now. So, going to guess.
Well, I mean, come on. This is the man that beat Medicare. Mm-hmm. So, if he says he can do it, I believe him.
Right. And then Biden, of course, said that Trump wants to sign a 6-week national abortion ban, even though the Trumpster fire literally said that he did not want to do that moments earlier.
And Trump has always been pro-abortion, hasn't he?
Yeah, he is.
I mean, he's like their biggest customer. He's got to be. So
right. He is personally pro-abortion. He just doesn't think it should be a national law because of political reasons. Yeah. Right. But he in New York supports their abortion laws, which are very liberal. And he said multiple times, he's like, you're going to have very liberal abortion laws under the current ruling, and that's a good thing. And then you'll have very conservative laws, and that's a good thing. Yeah. So I'm not saying that Trump's a good guy or that he's even saying the truth, but it would be consistent with his COVID policy, which would let the governors decide what happens in the states that they're in based on the needs they have there. So it's hard to attack that position. It just is for me. So generally, I support that position for most things.
Yeah, which we talked about on a previous episode, states' rights.
Right. Definitely can be a dog whistle. I do not mean it in that fashion.
I know.
Yeah, I do not. Oh, and Biden brought that up, too, because he tried to make it a dog whistle for ending civil rights law. And it was kind of a babble. But you really have to decipher what's being said because it's not a coherent statement. It's like words just in a random order, kind of.
Yep. And then you're left to kind of interpret or guess what the meaning was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. So the next question was about illegal immigration. Now, Biden babbles for about a minute, and it's unintelligible.
Yep.
And then he made a claim that is apparently a lie, that the Border Patrol supports him and his border policies. Now, I fact-checked this. The head of the Border Patrol came out and said that they do not, in fact, support President Biden's border policies. Now, Trump made a statement after this that he had the safest border in all of history.
Nobody's had a safer border than him.
Nobody had a safer border than him. And then he made some crazy-ass claims about how many criminals were crossing the border, which is like an impossible number to throw out, right?
Yeah.
And then he had some more babble and some bragging and insulted Joe Biden. And then he also claimed that Border Patrol supports him, which the head of the Border Patrol did not deny, but did not confirm that either. So you can read between the lines, but they certainly don't support open borders.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to make this note because I was looking at Biden during this heated debate because Trump, kind of one of his policy things is the border. So Trump was trying to make his gimmick work.
Yeah.
And if you watch Joe Biden during this segment, he had an open-mouthed, lost stare into the middle of nowhere and looked like he was in La La Land.
Yeah. You mean he had a vacant stare into the middle of the crowd that he said hello to earlier in the evening, don't you?
That is correct. He was staring off into the nothingness of whatever studio they were in. Just I mean, I've been at parties where there's been some extracurricular activities going on, let's say.
Yeah.
And I've seen that look, and it's the look of somebody who is not at that place, if you know what I mean. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that look at parties where just alcohol was served and you get to the right stage of the night or somebody who drinks too much, they're like that too.
Sure.
Sometimes.
I was not talking about alcoholic beverages, but...
I know you weren't.
Yeah, I know
I'm
you
saying
know.
There's a lot of things that can lead to that kind of stare. You know, like maybe your upper, whatever they give old people uppers to focus, to concentrate. Maybe that wore off. I don't know.
Oh, we're going to get to that later.
Okay. Speaking of later, Mike, how far are you through your cigar?
I am about a quarter of the way through. I'm having lighting issues. I had some pinholing.
Oh, okay.
And then I had to relight it probably 3 times. I've turned my microphone off when I lit. It's not staying lit very well for me.
Okay, and I'm about halfway through, and mine stayed lit, but the ash... Normally, the ash on cigars stays roughly about the same size as the cigar, but this one was kind of, mushrooming out a bit.
Sure.
So, I
also have to say that the shape of my cigar is deforming a little bit. I'm getting bulges and smaller spots. And it's not where I'm holding the cigar at all. It's farther down.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The flavor for me is fine. The flavor of the smoke is fine. I'm still getting the bad taste from the wrapper, though.
Yeah, I'm getting the bad taste from the wrapper, and I'm not having any of those, I don't know if you'd call them quality control issues on the cigar, other than the ash kind of ballooned out, and I just tapped it off in the ashtray, and it kind of has gone back to what I would imagine normal ash to be. The taste is not overly great thus far for me. Mostly because of the wrapper taste. It's not good. It's not a good taste. The smoke is fine, but that wrapper taste lingers and then kind of colors everything else in your mouth.
Right. And I'm making a very concentrated effort to not put any moisture on the wrapper.
Yeah.
And control that. And the smoke itself is quite pleasant. Very smooth, very
the smoke
mellow.
Is nice. As soon as the smoke is gone, though, you're left with that wrapper taste. So it's just interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. So after the cigar check, now this debate they were having about illegal immigration devolved into an argument. And the moderators allowed the argument to go.
All right.
And I'm going to paraphrase. And I'm going to read exactly what I wrote. They argued about who is a bigger fascist, who worships the gods of war more, argued about the various misinformation claims, and both sucked military-industrial complex dick.
Okay.
So they had a good spat where they both argued about how much they loved militarism and war and killing people. And then they both did the Trump show, and Biden babbled like a man with dementia. That is exactly what I wrote. Yeah. So, that quickly devolved into just a fest about who loved the veterans more and who supported the military more and who spent more money on weapons of mass destruction more. And I don't know what else to say. They're the same person in some ways, right?
Exactly. Which our quote guessing game proved.
Mm-hmm. So the next question was about Israel. This is going to be short because they both
All right.
completely support Israel 100%. The only difference is that Trump is somewhat more critical of the United States giving money to NATO and Israel. And Biden wants to raise your taxes to give more money to both NATO and Israel. So
Okay.
there we go. Again, not a lot of difference.
Yep.
Then they asked a question about January 6th.
Yes.
And they both just spewed nonsense talk. It had nothing to do with the question. And the Democrats really want this to be an issue, but it's not. And I'm going to ask you a question about January 6th, Nate.
Yes.
So January 6th, for those who don't know, and everybody probably does, the idea is that a bunch of gun-toting, Second Amendment-supporting, hyper-mega enthusiasts gathered together and stormed the Capitol to overthrow the U.S. government and overturn the election. But they did this without any guns in their possession, and the police let them in and showed them around simultaneously.
Yep.
So why do the Democrats want to make this an issue when even the minimal amount of critical thinking skills would inform somebody like, why would a bunch of gun enthusiasts storm a building to take it over and not bring the fucking guns that they have?
I don't think I'm allowed to say why.
Why are you not allowed to say why? Like, why would the Democrats want to make this an issue? It's nonsense.
Well, I don't want to meet the same fate as Barack Obama's cook.
I'm just asking questions. I'm not drawing conclusions. I'm just asking questions.
Yes.
It just doesn't make any sense to me, the story. And I am not a MAGA supporter or a Trump supporter of any kind. And I watched January 6th live on TV with popcorn and beer. I thought it was a great show.
Yeah.
And I even live watched the president not tell everybody to go home. Like, there's definitely some questionable actions that Trump took during the proceedings, for sure.
Yeah.
But I do know some people who are firearms enthusiasts, and if they were to storm a building to try to take it over, I'm pretty sure they'd bring some firearms, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think bringing firearms to the Capitol is a surefire way to get unalived.
For sure.
And that's not a good story for either side. And I know that some of the people there were identified as, through and true MAGA people. But that doesn't mean everyone that was there was MAGA. And that doesn't mean that the whole operation wasn't a joint ops, let's say.
Well, it is also true that in an open hearing in Congress, the FBI would not say whether or not they had informants or provocateurs in the crowd, or how many. Well, they wouldn't confirm or deny that they had provocateurs in the crowd at all, let alone how many.
Yeah.
And we know in the past, for example, the 13 people that were going to abduct the governor of Michigan, only 2 were not FBI personnel. So 2 out of 13 of these people who were going to commit a terrorist act were actual terrorists, and 11 were U.S. government agents.
Yes.
So take that information and do with it what you will.
I'm sure it has no relation to January 6th. That's an unrelated topic, Mike. We're not trying to put ideas in anyone's head. FBI, if you're listening.
No. I'm just saying that in rural Michigan, they have enough FBI people to where 11 of them can convince 2 hillbillies to commit felonious acts in rural Michigan.
Yeah.
Not exactly a happening place, rural Michigan.
Yeah.
So
probably not.
Yeah, probably not. So after the January 6th nonsense talk, Biden threw some shade at Trump and mentioned that he was a convicted felon. Now, this is humorous, and it will come up later. So I'm not going to, ruin the punchline.
Okay.
Now, Trump, he was asked a question immediately after this. Trump was not allowed to respond. Trump was asked a question about whether or not he was going to go after his political opponents after being elected, right after Biden threw shade at him for being convicted by the Biden administration of a felony. So Trump dodged the question, and he immediately went after Hunter Biden being a felon and calling Joe Biden a criminal and calling the Biden family a criminal organization that would be exposed by the Hunter Biden laptop. And then he finished it with saying that his felony conviction was political retribution from Joe Biden and his administration. So he turned that on its head very brilliantly. He's a great showman, Trump. I have to give him that, right?
Yeah, these are the kind of situations he thrives in, I think.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And then, pathetically, Biden just babbles for felt like minutes. Just said nothing. Just like blah, 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 blah. Nothing talk. Had no coherent statement at all. And then Trump, of course, follows up this 2-minute nonsense babble by insulting Biden and questions his competency and calls him a liar. So this is the tone of this whole debate, right?
Yeah,
Biden can't get ahead.
Yeah, and despite being somewhat more with it, though, I think Trump falling back on the Trumpisms is his version of the Biden open-mouthed stare, but it makes him appear more in the present moment than Biden has seemed the past, year, 2 years, ever since Mitch McConnell started glitching out and they had to reboot him, or I don't know what happened there. But this is like watching a middle school debate from what you've described and from the little clips that I've seen. Like, you have two kids and they've staged a debate on the playground, and you're watching it, and it's humorous and funny because they're all doing what they're supposed to do. The old senile man is doing old senile man things, and the old angry man is doing the old angry man things. But I think when you stop and you think these are the two people that are going to lead our country, this is not the tone of the debate. This is not any of the stuff that I want in a leader, in a world leader.
I agree with you 100%. After writing all this down, I came to the conclusion that the Biden babble is 10 to 25% of everything that he says.
Yeah.
But the Trumpisms is 10 to 35%. So he's saying just as little or even less.
Yeah.
It's just he's saying, his nonsense about
his catchphrases.
Whatever. His catchphrases. Yeah, it is. It's promotion.
Which is all he needs, because the Trump supporters, all they want to hear is the catchphrases. And
they eat it up.
He's still with it. He's so sharp. And he said that before. We're still with him. He's not wavering on his position. He can't remember a different position. He's only got the one.
Right. They eat it up. And it's still nonsense talk. It's just not unintelligible nonsense talk.
Well, it's nonsense talk for a purpose.
Yeah,
I guess. Like he or his people are at least having him play the hits, I guess, when he goes into these things. Like, if you get confused, just say one of your things, and everyone will love it, and the Democrats will hate it, and then your people will love it even more.
Yep. He's playing to the base, and it's just a bunch of shit. So next big question they had was about the prison system.
Okay.
We have an incarceration issue in the United States. Biden completely sidesteps the issue. He babbles a lot.
Yeah.
And more was said about what he didn't say than what he did. And he finished his little babble session with claiming that he's doing great helping black people.
Okay.
Which he didn't mention that he signed the crime bill that caused all this shit to happen in the first place. Yeah. And made very stiff penalties for drug possession and everything else that's causing this issue, or one of the causes of the issue.
Well, listen, Mike, he can't help black people if he doesn't hurt them first, okay?
Right. That's true.
I'm here to save you from me.
Right. So Trump, instead of immediately pouncing and bringing all this up and then bringing up his criminal justice reform, which is the only person that's done criminal justice reform in my lifetime.
Yeah.
He just talks about inflation, and then he brought up how the open border was bringing wages down. Didn't talk about what he did or what Biden did. He totally sidestepped, which I thought was a major mistake. Yeah, probably not with it enough to be able to bring that up from his memory, I'm guessing.
Yeah, to make the connections.
Right.
I want to mention real quick, Mike, this has nothing to do with the debate.
Mm-hmm.
I am getting some pretty significant canoeing on my cigar. And I've been rotating it as I smoke, like I do. But one side of it is burning faster than the other side.
Oh.
So I know you had some lighting issues, and this is the first time in probably 2 or 3 years I've had a cigar do this on me. And the previous time was probably definitely my fault. But this one I've been trying to rotate because I've been trying to avoid areas of the of the wrapper for the taste, but that's not working either. So I just did want to mention that real quick.
Absolutely. So I'm not having any canoeing, and my pinholing is gone. And
Okay.
I'm enjoying the taste, but I am really aggressively making sure that I do not get any moisture on it at all.
Yeah.
And it is not what I would call an entirely pleasurable experience doing that. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
and I've been
actively
not as
attempting to make
diligent
it better.
because I just don't want to have to do that much work for a cigar. Like smoking a Gurkha slow is one thing, but trying to make sure that my lips are dry and I'm not, and I'm not lingering on the stick, and like that's just a little much for me in terms of that. So I'm just kind of taking the taste as it comes to me. Right. So we can compare final thoughts at the end, but
yeah, we will. I'm gonna guess you're having not a very pleasant experience because that wrapper is vile. That is foul.
It is very vile, and I'm just gonna say it right off the bat now. And I've got at least, I don't know, a little over a third left, maybe a bit, somewhere between a half and a third, whatever that works out to be, 5/7, or I don't know. I'm not good with that. This is a surprise to me coming from Rocky Patel, with Rocky Patel prominently on the label.
It is a disappointment. It is a disappointment.
Yeah.
I will not tell a lie. I expect better. I was
even anticipating sitting down and saying, we're going to have a great cigar because, it's a Rocky Patel. It says Rocky Patel on it. It looks great. It looks like a really good stick. But no, that first wetting the end brought me back down to earth, let's say.
Right. So, yeah, we'll continue. This is all under the prison system question, by the way.
Okay.
So Biden actually made some points. He claimed that the economy was decimated in 2020, and then he babbled. And then he claimed that Donald Trump made cuts to the police force during his presidency. So, and then Trump immediately claimed that the police support him. And then he finally brought up that Biden used to call Black people who had drug addictions super criminals, and that he, in fact, did prison reform. And then he actually had some very super specific examples of some of his success stories for people that got out of jail from his prison reform, which I thought was weird. Like, he must have just remembered it. It must have been boiling in the back of his mind, and he remembered it. And then he did the bragging Trump show.
Yes. I have a question, Mike.
Yeah.
I didn't watch this, and I don't know that I've really watched any presidential debate live. I've seen clips of them and stuff. Do they bring like notepads or tablets up there? Are they wearing earpieces to talk to their people? Are they do they have their own team running their own teleprompters? Or
I've watched pretty much every presidential debate since I was a teenager, and they are not allowed to have earpieces or notes. They're not supposed to be supplied questions either, but Hillary Clinton in 2016 was provided notes.
Okay.
So they break the rules, let's put it that way. You know
depending,
what I mean.
I guess depending on who's hosting the debate.
Who's hosting the debate and everything else like that. So they try to have the appearance that they're answering it off the top of their head, but in reality, they're not.
Well, and even if they don't have the questions or the specific list, they've gone through their internal teams thinking of potential questions that might be asked. Like they've trained for it. It's not like they've trained specifically for the debate. Not that this debate would lead anyone to believe that they did any sort of training, but there's prep work that one does typically when you go into a debate type situation.
Well, the political parties try to frame the narrative of the election so that they can control what's being talked about. And that's just political theory, right? You want to control the narrative as much as you can. So each political team is going to have a very good idea what they're going to ask based on the narrative that they're saying and the narrative that their opponent is saying and the narrative that's going on in the fifth estate. So
and the moderators too, like because they know who the moderators were beforehand, didn't they?
Well, yes, they did, and that's what I mean by the fourth estate. That's the news, right? So what's in the news cycle? What are they trying to highlight? Is there a mad dog out there bringing up an issue that neither party wants to talk about, they're probably going to ask a question about it. And you have to have a plan for it. So it's a pretty controlled environment.
And that plan is open your mouth and stare into nothing.
Yes. Yes, that is the plan. It's awful.
Yeah, he plays that part a little too well. I think we've got a new Oscar nominee in the making.
Yes, it's, not good. Let's just put it that way. So the next question they brought up, climate change. And Trump had the opener for it.
Okay.
And he actually had an answer. I don't necessarily agree with everything he said, but he had an answer. He said that he supports clean water, clean air, 100%. And then he made the claim that he had the best air ever, the best environment ever. And he wants the United States to promote all forms of energy. And then he said that he was anti-Paris Climate Accord because of the unequal money going to the treaty. And then he brought up illegal immigration for some reason.
Okay.
So
the cleanest environment and air ever, not just post-industrial revolution, but ever. Before we started pumping stuff into the air, he had the cleanest air ever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So Biden, he babbles a bunch, right? And then he, for some reason, brought up that an issue with climate change is that black students are not getting science degrees at the same rate as white students.
Okay.
And he at no point made any claim about the environment or climate change or how he would do anything to do anything better. And he attacked Trump for pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, but he didn't get back into the Paris Climate Accord either. So he tried to DEI the question, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, why does he think black students have the answer to climate change specifically? I'm not saying that they don't. Anyone could have the answer to climate change, but it's curious that he thinks specifically black students have the answer to it. I'm not saying they don't. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's a weird thing to single out for that question that you are getting.
It is DEI, Joe. It's exactly what it is. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the Democrat policies right now. It's like not diversity of thought, just diversity of physical appearance. And it's pathetic.
Well, and that's been working well for Boeing, so I'm all for it.
Right. So now they brought up Social Security, and Biden answered. He actually had an answer. A real
Did he beat that too?
Answer.
Or,
No, yeah, right. So he said that Social Security caps out at $170,000. He wants to raise Social Security up to 7% from 6%, I believe. Trying to read my note. I scribbled a little bit. Oh, he wants to raise the cap of 7% from 170 to 400,000. And then he wants to put it at 1% for anybody making over 400,000.
Okay.
And I say, why have a cap? Why have a cap? Just have everybody pay the same percentage.
Yeah.
I don't understand why he magically wants to raise the cap again. They've raised the cap twice in my working career to my remembrance now.
Yeah.
And it's like, just make there no cap. Just don't have a fucking cap. And then there's not a problem.
Yeah, if it's something you're going to keep raising. I mean, it's almost like the debt ceiling, right? They raise that a couple times a year, it seems like. So just don't have one, then we don't have to worry about it.
Right.
That's how that works, right? That's fiscal responsibility. Just get rid of the debt ceiling and you're okay.
Oh, yeah. So in traditional Trump fashion, he did not talk about Social Security. He called Biden a liar. And then he brings up a bunch of issues with Joe Biden, his Trumpisms. And then he talks about illegals on Social Security and yeah, right. His Trumpism. He went to the Trump show immediately.
Yeah, but he had the best Social Security in the history of Social Security ever, I'm sure.
Yes. And then, incredibly enough, under Social Security, it devolved into an argument about who wanted to fucking fillet the military more on a question about Social Security. It was like, no, I want the whole military to fuck Melania. They're like, oh, well, Jill's already taken all those dicks. I'm going to take them too, And then it's just like, what the fuck does the military industrial complex have to do with Social Security? Well, gentlemen, I can tell you.
I'm guessing money.
Yeah, I can tell you. It's money to their campaigns, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it amounts to. Now, in this midst of this argument, they did ask a question about childcare and the incredible cost of childcare and what they were going to do to lower it. And neither one of them answered that question. They just continued sucking military cock. They could not stop themselves arguing about who supports the military more and who wanted to kill more people and who wanted to increase budgets and have weapons of mass destruction and invade more countries. So their solution for your childcare is just create more war, kill more children. That's their solution for high childcare cost.
Yeah. I mean, less kids should bring the cost down because there's less demand.
Right.
Hey, what's the difference between the military complex dick and a joke?
What?
Jill Biden can't take a joke.
That's great. She's terrible. So at the end of this filleting the military, they then argued about which one was the worst president in U.S. history, right? And they both said each other, of course.
Well,
and
they're not, neither of them are great, but I don't know that that's the worst, but.
Right. And God, it's like you're both the worst. I don't know. And then they argued about open borders. And then Trump brought back up that he wants to cut tax for rich people. And then Biden made the back and forth claim that Trump wanted to raise taxes on the middle class, which he already did.
Yeah.
And again, they didn't answer the question. They didn't want to talk about any practical solutions for childcare costs. It was just talking point, not answer question. So after this, they asked about drug addiction and drugs in the United States, and they both had the same answer. Is they want to continue doing what we're doing now, and they want to somehow magically stop drug addiction by stopping drugs from crossing the U.S. border.
All right.
They want no change in policy. So they don't support legalizing marijuana nationally. They don't support legalizing any of the drugs nationally. They don't support any sort of drug treatment plan. All the practical things that you and I, as two jack-offs talking on the internet, can come up with that would make the drug problem less and the crimes associated with people being addicted to drugs less. They just don't care, right? They just want the military to kill people on the border and continue as it goes.
Yeah, sounds
After
about right.
this, they asked them about their age and whether or not it's an issue. So
they waited this long?
Yes. The Biden, he babbled on, and then he ended his babbling 2-minute long statement with, the United States is the best, and that we're the strongest we've ever been.
Okay.
And Trump,
we beat Medicare.
Yeah, we beat Medicare, and we have 1,000 trillionaires. So this is the beginning of another famous argument you might have seen. So Trump, he says he took cognitive and physical tests and that he's passed them with flying colors and he's very active and that he loves golf. And he talks about his golf game a little bit and how, he's maintaining his physical health by physical activity, via golf. And then he ends with some Trumpisms. And this is where it gets interesting. And I have some fact checking here.
All right.
Now, Biden said that his golf handicap is a 6, which Trump questioned. And then he challenged Trump to a golf match, but they had to carry their own bags on the course, which is neither one of them can do that. You and I might not be able to do that. Not pleasantly, for sure.
We can do it, but it's a pain in the ass.
Right.
Like, why would you do it? The carts are right there. Even the little wheeled carts. Anyway, carry on, Mike.
They both have over 40 years on us, so I wouldn't find it very enjoyable to carry my clubs around, for sure.
I've done it, but I don't like it.
Yeah. And then, so Biden backs up his claim of 6 immediately and says it's an 8 when Trump calls bullshit on it. And Trump never brought up his handicap, so I did some fact checking here.
Okay.
The USGA, which is the United States Golf Association, has established handicaps for both of these gentlemen.
Yes.
And the last time that Joe Biden recorded a score was 2018, which that sends my tinglers up. So he hasn't even been playing golf routinely since 2018.
Yeah.
That's a problem because golf is something, it's a hobby. If you're a dart
golf
thrower,
is something, it doesn't matter how old and fat you are.
Yeah.
Body type doesn't matter in golf, typically.
Not to the extent where you stop playing golf. Like if you stop playing golf, you have issues, physical problems.
Yeah,
right?
Most likely balance.
That, or you can no longer mentally keep track of the game you're playing.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, all you have to do is find your ball and hit it, but I mean, these people, they have the caddies that recommend them their clubs, and the caddies help them find their fucking ball. And meanwhile, I'm scrambling through the weeds trying to figure out where in the out of bounds zone I went, because I only brought 30 balls this day and not 45 like I should have.
Right. So I'm going to defend Biden a little bit here, weirdly. In 16, he had a 10 handicap, but in 18, he had a 6.7.
Okay.
So he wasn't really lying, but he was misrepresenting his ability to play golf, because I don't think he has the ability to play golf anymore. At least not at the level that he was, right?
Maybe he meant mini golf, Mike.
Right. And by the way, a handicap of 6, which is close enough, would put him in the top 25% of male players or the top 3% of female players. So it's actually not bad. Like he's not a bad golfer. Or was.
When he last golfed.
When he last golfed.
Yeah.
So Trump publicly said afterwards that his handicap was currently 2.8. Now, the USGA... That's the
best golfer ever, right?
...disagrees with him, because he does have an established handicap, and it's actually 2.5.
Okay.
So he undersold his handicap. He was actually being probably 100% honest. His handicap's probably gone up this year by a little bit, whereas his last year was a little bit lower, right? Yeah. So he's actually a very good golfer, which is not a surprise, given that he golfs all the time.
That's all he does, isn't it?
Yeah, it's his big hobby. So
that and banging hookers. So
yeah, that and banging hookers, which of course people are saying, oh, what nonsense, they're arguing about golf. It's not the argument about golf so much as it is the context for the facts, right? Biden is too fucking old to play golf.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, is it's not really about the golf. It's something that both of them know, both of them do. So it's an activity that both of them do or have done in the recent past. And if they have to measure their dicks without whipping them out and measuring their dicks, and they both play golf, I assure you, if it was pickleball or racquetball or tennis or pool or darts, and they both played one of those games, that's what the conversation would be about. But the point of talking about those and talking about the handicaps is, are they physically fit, physically able to do the job of president?
Right.
And I don't know quite how the handicaps work in golf or what it means, but I haven't played golf in quite a few years, although I've got my clubs out here in the garage next to me. Golf is fairly frustrating depending on who I'm playing with. I like to go out and drink and smoke and occasionally hit the ball. And if we keep score, that's fine. And if not, we're outside. And if I keep score, then I start getting angry. If we're playing like competitive with competitive people, if they're just people who are out having fun, like, yeah, I'll keep score and I lost, great, whatever. Had some beer, had some cigars, and all was good.
Now, the next question was about election denial, which has been a trend amongst both political parties for some time. And they asked it to Trump because they like to claim that Trump is an election denier, even though Hillary Clinton also was an election denier.
Okay.
Yes. Not to get too deep into the weeds. But Trump answered that if the election is fair and free, he will accept the results. And then he reiterated that his indictment was political. And then he finished up with some Trumpisms. And then he made the very bold claim that I actually agree with, that we are on the brink of World War III.
Yeah, we're on the brink of something. And I don't know if it's World War III or a Civil War, man, but it's something.
That's the same difference at this point. Potentially.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Potentially. So Biden follows up this actual cogent statement, one of the only that was made during the whole debate, with babble. And his eyes bugged out huge. And he just started, saying nothing very quick.
Okay.
Like a freak out. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And then the election moderators tried to control it, and they re-asked the question. And Trump repeated damn near word for word what he said the first time.
Yep.
After Biden's babble. And then Biden babbled some more. And Trump comes back.
Swing and a miss.
Swing and a miss, right? And Trump comes back and he follows up on what he said the first time, which was that Russia is being aggressive due to Joe Biden's incompetency.
Yeah.
And then Biden came back and said that Trump's a whiner. And then he babbles a lot. And they never directly asked Biden whether or not he would accept the results of the election. And this is not the first time. I made notes. I didn't bother saying it because I already prefaced this with the moderators are one-sided.
Yeah.
And they put the kid gloves on Biden. They never asked Biden a direct question about whether he would accept the election results or not. So,
yeah, I think it's pretty clear at this point it's not up to Biden if he accepts those results or not. It's up to his handler.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And his handler is Joe Biden. We're going to get into that later.
Okay. I don't know how much more later we can go.
I'm almost done with my notes. I still have 2 inches.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, you must have caught up with me. Or I slowed way down because it's not my favorite stick.
Right. I'm enjoying it.
Okay.
Given the very specific modification to my normal style of smoking, right? Okay. Which is not a pleasant experience. But I am actually enjoying the smoke just fine. It's almost like they should have wrapped the tip with a different leaf.
Yeah, literally anything else.
Literally anything else. So now we're going to go closing. We're already at closing statements, guys. Biden said that he wants a fair tax system, and then he just does a countdown, which is one of his tactics. He does a countdown. Like, first of all, second of all, blah, blah, blah. But then his countdown was just babble. It was saying nothing. Like, it was blah, 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 blah. And that's one of his trademarks is, first of all, second of all, which he used to do and then say things. And now he just doesn't have it anymore. So he just says nothing, right? And it's goofy. Yeah. It's like a tick. And then Trump starts off with Trumpisms. Then he goes over his main talking points. And then he finishes with some bullshit Trumpisms, which is probably what you should do in a debate like this, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And just analyzing the performance, I don't think that either one convinced me that they were the candidate that was going to solve all the world's problems for sure. But
and even if one appears more competent, it doesn't. I mean, if you look good and only like just good next to somebody who's clearly falling apart, it's probably not the feather in your cap you think it is.
Right. And that would be my analysis. Trump looked better than Biden. But Biden did not look, I mean, it's like me talking to my dog, right? Like, I don't know how else to put it.
If you ask your dog, do you want to go on a walk, your dog can answer you in a way you can understand. If you ask your dog about the socioeconomic situation in Iran, you'll probably get what Joe Biden said for most of the questions.
Exactly. And I can tell you that I would rather play golf with Donald Trump any day of the week.
He's probably got better cigars. I don't know.
I don't think he smokes cigars, but...
That doesn't mean he doesn't have them for guests.
Right. Well, again, this is a devolution we probably don't have time for, but he just hosted a friend's wedding at his home on Mar-a-Lago. He's got a big mansion on the golf course, right?
Yeah.
His friend was a gay man.
Yep.
So to attack Trump from the left is very hard when you have the Republican candidate who supports trans rights and supports gay rights and is generally libertarian
and supports
on social
abortion.
issues. Yeah, he supports abortion personally, right? And he makes that demarcation. Like, his personal beliefs are not necessarily what he thinks should be national policy for every place.
Yeah.
And any attack against him on those issues it's just an open-faced lie, right? That's not me supporting Donald Trump at all. But
no, but if he's consistent and doing those things, I mean, those are things you would look for in a candidate. It's not the only thing you would look for in a candidate. I mean, age and hopefully moral fortitude. But
right. I didn't look it up. I will, potentially. But I would bet money that Donald Trump came out in support of gay marriage before Joe Biden did.
Probably true.
And he was supporting trans women being involved with like beauty pageants before it was cool. Yeah. So what are you gonna say, right?
Yeah.
So afterwards, Joe Biden did a press conference / rally.
Yep.
And it was disturbing. Have you seen video footage of this?
Is this the one where he says he's going to be the first female black president?
No, that was an interview that he gave the questions to the interviewer, and then he still somehow fucked up the answers that they asked him that he gave them the questions to. Everybody should go look that up because he gave them the questions and he had recorded answers and he still couldn't give them the recorded answer, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, Mike, I do know because I got a notification while we were recording this episode, and we're recording this, I don't know, 2 weeks ahead of when you'll be listening to it, the listener. But he just got out of a conference, a news conference, and he called the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, referred to him as President Putin, and then called Kamala Harris Vice President Trump. So he's still on a roll.
This is not we covered that in a previous show. He's said that multiple times.
Yeah.
So it's not new, I guess. But so anyway, Joe Biden held a little pep rally immediately after, and he looked like a zombie on the stage, like open mouth, hands in front of him, staring off into the distance, and Jill Biden was doing the talking.
Yep.
And she said, and this is a direct quote, "Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lie!" And does that sound like something you say to the president of the United States? Or is that something you say
like
to
a first grade teacher? You tell a bunch of 6-year-olds, you answered every question on that quiz. Good for you.
That is not something you say to even a teenager.
No.
Right? Like that's how you talk to your dog. Like, oh, such a good dog.
Isn't that's like the easiest kind of like crowd rallying, and Biden can't do that himself? Like, he can't get up there and say, what did Trump do at the rally? Like, they would all say lie.
Dude, he wasn't even looking at her when she was talking.
Yeah. Why would he? He's got hair to smell.
Yeah. It was crazy. Everybody who hasn't seen it, if you are a Biden supporter and you think that he is just the best thing, watch that and tell me that is a candidate for president that anybody should support. That is not an endorsement of anybody. That is an anti-endorsement, right?
Yeah. I think so. I'm not a Trump supporter, and he tells a lot of outlandish things that simply aren't true. His supporters say even more outlandish things that simply aren't true because they've not looked into any of this. They take what he says at face value, and then they kind of ascribe their own wants and desires onto what he said, and they never go and try and see what his actual policies are. And you've got these very conservative Christians who are very, very much opposed to abortion, cheering for somebody who's pro-abortion. But don't you dare tell them that. And so religion doesn't have anything to do with it, really. I don't like Trump. I don't like him. But I think he's the clear winner of that debate, even though everything was stacked against him. Like, they made it as easy as possible for Joe Biden to come out ahead. And all Joe Biden had to do was remember to breathe every 30 seconds, let's say, and say something that made sense. And he just couldn't do it. And I don't care if you love him to death. That's not what you want in a president. I don't know what to tell you. Mike, you sent me that article where he said he's not going to do anything after 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Any events. And my response to you was, well, if any kind of disaster happens after 8 or 9 o'clock at night, it's just going to have to wait till morning. I mean, that's not what you
like he has
need
office
in a
hours.
president.
Yeah, he has office hours as a president.
Yeah.
You don't even have office hours as a maintenance person, for fuck's sake.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, it's terrible. It's terrible. So, despite this performance, Trump did take a lead over Biden, but it's not a lot. They're really close on polling still.
Yeah.
Still. And who...
Yeah.
Again, this is not an endorsement of Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump's a piece of shit. But who could vote for the fucking corpse that is Joe Biden? He is a zombie.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
He's hit Mitch McConnell levels.
He's reached Dianne Feinstein levels.
Yeah.
It's wild. And that is not an endorsement of his political opponent. I'm reiterating.
Yeah. I guess when I saw the reports and the stories and the clips from the debate, I didn't watch the whole thing, but just the clips, and I've said this even before the debate, is how are these two people our best two options as a country?
Oh, it's pathetic. Trump recently released his short list of VP candidates, and they're terrible as well. So my hopes and dreams that he would pick a good vice presidential candidate are quickly dissipating. Yeah. Because realistically, we're going to end up with one of these two clowns. And
and it's going to either be then President Kamala Harris or President whomever Donald picks.
Right. So
the odds are they both could live 4 more years, 5 more years. but they're both at that age where they
Their
could just not wake up one day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
their bodies may stay alive.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. Their bodies may stay alive. One of the two, clearly not mentally there. The other one probably never was mentally there. Okay, let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, at least during their presidential term.
Right.
Mike, I have a question for you, unless you have more to talk about.
I only had a conspiracy theory to bring up.
Okay, I have my question might lead into that quite nicely.
Sure.
My question, Mike, is do you happen to know what the process for removing a sitting president due to incompetency is?
Yeah, so it'd have to be the Speaker of the House and the Senate. President of the Senate would have to call a hearing or something like that. And then they would vote to impeach, and it would be an impeachment trial. And then the vice president would take over.
And they'd have to also vote to remove from office because impeachment doesn't equal removing from office.
Yes, they would have to vote to remove from office through the impeachment process.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is not impossible, as we've seen during Donald Trump's presidency, because he was impeached. Right. He wasn't removed, though.
Yeah, he was impeached for one of the reasons to vote for him, which was not funding the war in Ukraine, right? Yeah. So it's... As a liberal, there's a better candidate, and unfortunately, it's not Joe Biden. Not saying that either one is a good candidate, right? But a nail to the foot and a nail to the face is not the same thing. So,
I don't know that either of those nails would register with Joe. Anyway, what's your conspiracy theory, Mike? I will mention my cigar went out, and I am simply not going to relight it.
Okay. Well, it's going to be quick. So this is the earliest debate they've ever had between the candidates. It is a one-off. I don't know if it's ever happened before where it happened this early, before there were even nominees officially.
Yep.
So one of the conspiracy theories is that this was set up by the DNC in such a way so that they would have no primary and that at the national convention, they could vote in a different nominee.
Yeah.
And the nominees could be Newsom, it could be Kamala, it could be the governor of Michigan. I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. Gretchen Whitmire.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
It could be any of the big names, but they didn't want a primary because they didn't want any opposition from somebody like RFK Jr., right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't want the stank that happened when Bernie lost to Hillary because, as people should know, in the Democratic Party, they have superdelegates, and there are more superdelegates than there are primary delegates. So it's possible for somebody to win every primary and still not be the nominee.
Yeah, just like the Electoral College. Like it's possible to win the popular vote and still not be president.
That's correct. Exactly like that. Which happens pretty routinely now.
Yeah.
Because New York and California... I mean, between the two coasts, you have well over 50% of the population, and you do not have 50% of the electoral votes.
Yeah.
Good or bad, right? That's a separate conversation.
Yeah, the system is what the system is. But that conspiracy theory doesn't sound outlandish at all, Mike. I think if that is true, and even if it's not true, it is probably becoming very true with all the even high-level Democratic people calling for Joe Biden to step down. For him to have a poor performance where it was very clearly set up to be an easy win for him. The people that are pulling the strings or doing whatever they do wanted to show everybody else, but to have it be a sympathetic thing where you can get that transfer of love for Joe Biden, and you can transfer it smoothly to somebody without them having to compete directly with Joe. Right, because then you can get that transference of love or support without poisoning your own well, and you can replace Joe with literally anybody else. And I think the only way for them to do that is to find somebody considerably younger that can actually run verbal circles around Donald.
It's not going to be Kamala Harris, that's for sure.
No. I mean, they might still pick Kamala Harris, but I don't think that would be their best bet. They need somebody that is sharp and quick-witted and can call Donald out on all the Donald stuff he does and get him confused because he's of that same age. He's not that much younger than Biden at all. And It's a tough age. It's not an age to be president, in my opinion.
No, it's a great age to hang out at the golf course or bowling alley or wherever and coach younger people how to participate in an activity or be a Shriner and do charity or travel the world or do whatever.
Sit at home and converse with your lawyers about all the lawsuits that are still out pending against you.
Right. It's not an age that you want to have the leader of everyone.
Yeah. Or even the leader of anything. You want to shift to a consultant role. Like, you call me if you have a problem, otherwise I'm golfing. I'm on my yacht. You call me if you need me, just don't need me.
Right. Yeah. But that's pretty much all I had. They are so similar in so many ways. And I tried to highlight the differences and mention when they agreed. And their disagreements were just talking points for the most part.
Yeah.
Biden did have a few things that were real reforms, but he's had 4 years and he's done nothing for reform. So it's all nonsense, right?
And he hasn't walked back any of the stuff that Trump did.
No. He didn't walk back the tax changes under Trump. Nope. He hasn't done anything. He didn't even walk back the pullout on climate accords or create a new climate accord. How about that?
Yeah,
right?
There's an idea.
Yeah, there's an idea. Why don't we come up with new agreements? It's just all nonsense. So, very disappointing performance. I still have about an inch and a half left, but I'm fine with putting it down because...
Okay. Speaking about disappointing performances, I cannot stress to you how disappointed I am in this cigar and how nasty the wrapper is and was consistently through the entire stick. And it's not as bad as the Underground Shade. It's not as bad as the Cult Blood Red Moon, but this one, I recommend you stay as far away from it as possible.
I agree. It's hard. It's so disappointing to me because I really wanted it to be good, and it just wasn't. I am going to give this one... Oh, you already put a 1 in there. You put a 1.5.
I gave it a 1.5.
So the smoke itself, I found to be very mellow and very pleasing.
Yes.
But that wrapper at the end was so vile.
Yeah, I wonder if this is a stick if you buy it and then keep it in your humidor for 5 to 10 years, that it might be a good smoke.
This one's been in our humidors for some time.
Yeah.
Probably a year, maybe more. I don't recall.
Yeah, possibly 2 at a kind of a good average point. I don't think it's been in there longer than 3, but it might have been in there for 2 years.
It might have been in there 2 years. It's been in there for some time. I've had this for some time.
Yeah.
And they should have put a different wrapper.
Yeah. And we should mention that not only was the wrapper bad, but you had some lighting issues at the beginning and some pinholing, and I had some canoeing past the halfway mark. So whatever's going on with this cigar, and ours are from the same batch, presumably.
Presumably the same box. Yep.
Maybe it was just a box issue. I can't imagine the taste would be, but the pinholing and the canoeing might have been. They were stored in appropriate humidors, as we always do. But even for a budget, this falls in our budget, Mike?
Oh, yes. Yep.
This one I can't recommend. I can't do it. Normally, Rocky Patel is like a sure thing, but...
Yeah, not this one. I rated it as a 2.
A rare miss, we'll say.
I rated it as a 2. Only because if it wasn't for that wrapper, I would have put it as probably a 3, maybe 3.5. But that wrapper just brings it down. It's not a 1. But it's
and that's like I initially was like 1, but I'm like, no, it's not as bad as some of these other ones that we've smoked. But the wrapper,
I'm still smoking it. The smoke is very pleasant, but you have to not put any moisture on the actual wrapper of the cigar.
I need a little like cap condom or something that I could put over the end and then smoke it. But at that point, I'd rather just pick something else up. So
absolutely not a recommend.
Yes. So I think that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for listening.
Be safe. Have fun.